everyone. Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining. It's nice seeing again new faces and again some people that are coming back. It means that it's interesting. We're really happy about that. So let's continue our journey into AI-powered innovations and talk about the role of next best interventions. So what is actually NBI, as we say, in shaping positive healthcare experiences? Let's welcome now the Global Head of Digital Advanced Analytics and AI, Firuze Ovali. So let's probably start, Firuze, with giving a big picture, I would say. I have heard that the patient journey is still very challenging, very complex. Why on earth is that happening? I mean, technology is everywhere. We have been improving a lot in science. Why is that happening?
Yeah. So first of all, it's a great question. The thing is, when you look at outside, I mean, it seems two patients are the same once they are diagnosed for the same thing. In reality, it is not the case. The reason, because the patient pathway is full of a lot of different struggles. When you look at the patient journey, there are 4 stages in the patient journey. First of all, the patient needs to be diagnosed. After the diagnosis, then the next step is the physician needs to decide on the treatment. And once it is treated, it is not the end of the journey, because onboarding to the therapy is another stage that the patient needs to really go through. And the last part is staying on the therapy, which is also not easy. Because of the very different type of hurdles that the patients are having, out of 100 patients, only 10 is really getting the prescriptions because of the different barriers that they're having. It is not because they don't want care. They all really want care. The problem is that the system is not designed for their personalized needs. That is why the intervention that you provide to the patient cannot be one fits for all. It needs to be personalized, it needs to be really tailored, and it needs to be dynamic. So that's why, as Sanofi, we are really trying our best to really make it happen.
So that's quite surprising, and I would say worrying to know these figures. But then let's probably take a deep dive on the hurdles. Tell us more about that.
Exactly. So let me take you through the onboarding process. So once a patient is decided which treatment they will take, they start another journey where they have a lot of very different type of hurdles. Either the physician is not experienced enough to put all the information they need to the prescription. Sometimes the patients are exhausted because of the paperwork they have. Sometimes they have a lot of problems with their insurance, meaning they are not covered or they do not able to copay. Sometimes they are not familiar with their medications, especially once we are talking about injection. So that's why it is not an easy path for them. So that is why the topic is really to really help them on their journey. If they're not really well supported on their journey, we see that 35% of the new prescriptions are never filled. Meaning, even if they are, let me say, defined which treatment they need to get, 35% do not really onboard to their therapy. So that's why they really need help.
So you mentioned the onboarding complicated process. What about the rest of the steps? Is it better?
It is not really the case because, I mean, staying on a therapy is as hard as starting the therapy. Because once the patient starts on the journey, they need to adhere to the treatment. Whereas there are a lot of hurdles they're having. Just to give you a few examples, sometimes they forget their doses. Or they have problems with their insurance because their status changes. In some cases, they really think that they are good enough, meaning they are treated, which is not the reality, because if they cannot continue the treatment, it is very easy to go back to day one, and they lose all the effort that they put. So that's why.
And let me just check a little bit in the audience. How many people have stopped their therapies thinking that they're feeling better? Raise your hands. I'm raising my hands. Huh? Well, see, most of us, we do that.
Yes, yes, exactly. This is really the reality. And even with the facts, you can see it. I mean, when you look at the facts, 50% of the patients stop following their medication within 6 months. So imagine you take all through the hurdles, you start your therapy. I mean, we lose 50% of the patient because of the hurdles they're having. So that's why they really need to be supported. If not, then we lose half of them.
So let's watch a video showing us how AI is powering the patients thanks to your innovation.
No two patients are the same. That's why the support they get shouldn't be the same either. Meet Sandra and Casey. They're neighbors, both in their 40s, both recently diagnosed with the same condition. But their journeys are very different. Sandra's doctor isn't very familiar with her new medication. Important paperwork is missed. No one shows Sandra how to use the injection. She feels lost. Behind the scenes, Sanofi's NBI analyzes trends using de-identified data, from prescribing habits to pharmacy insights, to anticipate challenges in care. Casey's doctor knows this medication well. Her paperwork is ready, and she's trained on how to take it. Casey starts her treatment with confidence. Staying on treatment can be just as hard as starting it. That's where Sanofi's NBI really shines. Sandra likes to take her medication after work. Casey prefers mornings. The NBI doesn't just learn, it adapts. Using their preferred contact method, the systems adapt support to fit their daily lives. Sandra checks her texts during lunch. Casey reads emails in the afternoon. The system adjusts, sending messages the way they prefer, when they're most likely to see them. And when cost becomes a challenge, the NBI steps in again, looking at insurance, coverage, and affordability. Case managers reach out with help, by text, email, or call. With Sanofi's NBI, every patient gets support that fits their life, helping them start treatment, stay on it, and feel better. Because when support is personal, care becomes powerful.
Well, that's an example that is actually could happen to anyone enough. We could be Sandra and Casey in the room. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So as you see in the example, Casey and Sandra are two fictional figures. But in reality, it really reflects the reality of a real patient. So when you look at the example, these two patients seems very similar, meaning they're diagnosed for the same thing, they're living in the same city, they have the same age. So when you look at outside, they seem very similar. Whereas the journey, the experience they're having are totally different. In the example, what we see is that Sandra is having a lot of problem with the injection. She's lost with the paperwork, so she's exhausted. Whereas in the Casey case, everything is perfect. So his HCP is really experienced. So it's very smooth. So as you see, although they seem to be very similar, the experience they're having are totally different.
So what's the difference here?
So the difference is that in the Sandra case, because she's having problems with the medication and with the healthcare, this is exactly where MBI really steps in. Because once the risk regarding the financial problems is detected by the MBI, then it creates a personalized intervention and then triggers a field reimbursement manager for the patient so that it can get the support in the right way with the right time so that it is resolved and they can continue their journey. So this is where the MBI really come up with the difference.
Yes, it's actually, let's say, a very human way of using AI somehow. What about the rest of the steps? We talked about the onboarding, how useful. We saw a few of the things as a teaser. Tell us about how the system is supporting through the therapy after the onboarding.
Yeah, so it becomes much more interesting because once a patient starts and then continues on the therapy, MBI starts to also help them to really adhere to it. what happens is that once they have problems with their medication, the doses and everything, it collects a lot of different type of data. We are talking about 150,000 different type of data points. It detects the risk, and it puts the right intervention in place, and it activates very different channels so that we really help the patients to really continue their therapy.
Another maybe, let's say, could be a hurdle, but is also maybe a barrier for some of the people, is the cost of all this. What about that?
So cost is one of the common hurdles that we see very commonly that the patients are facing. And this is exactly, again, where the MBI again steps in. So once we have analyzed and detect the high risk of a patient having a problem with the financials, meaning different type of data about their copay or some of the publicly available prescription data and things like that, we detect the problem with the financial, and then this is exactly where MBI steps in. It triggers a field reimbursement manager, and the field reimbursement manager goes to the office and really help the patient and the physician to solve the financial problem. And then the process really becomes smooth.
So I understand that it helps the patients, it helps also the healthcare professionals as they can actually follow the therapy, how the patient is taking the therapy actually. How would we sum up NBI if we had to sum up in a few lines?
So it is very simple. NBI does a few very critical things to resolve the problem of the patient. First of all, it predicts the risks that is associated with the patient and the HCP. Once the risk around not being converted, meaning onboarding, or dropout is detected, then the second portion of the MBI comes into place. It doesn't only detect the risk, but also it comes up with the personalized, tailor-made intervention to really resolve the problem. And the third step is activating it. Once the intervention is created, we are totally AI, ML built the model, then we activate it via different channels. So what are the channels? Basically, we put the intervention via our field force, or we use digital channels like mail or text messages, or in some cases, we use our application, which is My Way app, which is the patient support program application we have, to trigger the interventions. And the good news is that we see a dramatic increase in the maximizing the health outcomes of the patient. So what it really does is that it comes up with the next best intervention for the patient, which is tailored. It activates, and then it maximizes the health outcome for the patient.
Let me mention a sensitive topic. It's the data, obviously. What is happening?
So the thing is, it is very critical, and we are very sensitive on this topic. AI is the core and the DNA of the company, but what is very critical for us is to really be an AI-first company responsibly. So what does it mean? All the data we use is being totally detected and assessed by our compliance team. All the data that we have is being detailedly analyzed if it is really in the framework in terms of legal and regulative by each country. And once it is confirmed that it is good to use it, it is the only way that we use it. So that's where we are very sensitive on that topic.
So using AI in a proper way, I would say. And I heard about some exciting results. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So the good news is that the thing that I presented is not a concept. It is a reality. And the good news is that we already started to see the early result of it. So regarding the good result, there are two dimensions of it. The key thing that we see in terms of first dimension is the conversion. So we see around 1 to 3% increase in the conversion. So what does it mean? 1 to 3% of the patient who is not able to onboard the therapy before is now able to do it because they're well supported. And the second part that I want to emphasize is that the insights and the interventions we are generating via AI is totally acknowledged and accepted by the user. So it is around 90 to 95%. So it shows that the thing that we are really generating by power of AI is really resonating for the user as well. Do you know how much we are able to put additional focus on our patient support program only by using the AI? Do you
Let's
have
check.
any idea?
What's the percentage? Let's say 80%, 20%. Who says 80%? Who says 20? 20 over here. You know, I like the bets. 30%, 40%. You need to play lottery tonight, okay? There's lottery here in Paris if you do. So what's the figure?
So I think the guesses are pretty good. Good news is that by utilizing the, again, power of AI, now the patient support program that we have is putting 45% of their effort on the top 20 high-risk percile of the patient. So rather than trying to reach all the patients and diluting the effort, now they're putting full focus on the highest risk patient. So that's why we are trying, we started to see the good early result in terms of conversion and retention.
And what's next after NBI? What are you so excited about?
So the thing is, it's a very exciting journey because the thing that you're changing is patient's life, which is totally different. And the good news is that we have a big ambition to put it to the next level. So the thing is, the next frontier for MBI is to leverage generative AI and agentic AI to really take it to the next level. Imagine you have virtual case managers who are generating the content which is totally tailor-made on the right time, being activated with the right channel whenever the patient needs. So by utilizing agentic AI and generative AI, this is possible. And the good news is that, again, this is not only a concept, because we already started to pilot it and started to get the very promising result in advance.
After saying all this, what should we have in mind? What are your final thoughts?
Yeah. So I think the one thing that I think we should not forget is that every patient is unique. They have their own hurdles. So that's why it is not possible to come up with one type of intervention. It needs to be fully personalized, it should be dynamic, and it needs to be continuous. So that's why what we are trying to do with MBI is not only solving their problems, but coming up with the best-in-class patient experience, which is human, which is helpful, and which is hopeful.
Thank you very much. A great applause to you. Thank you. Any questions in the audience? Don't hesitate. We always, yes? Well, please bring close enough the mic. Thank you.
Hi, I would like to know, based on the previous, usual patient journey, after the implementation of NBI, are there any key insights on the changes in the patient journey that you have observed that created more stickiness to the treatment?
Exactly. So the key learning that I can say is that, the uniqueness of the patient journey is really much more than you can anticipate. It's not possible to group the patients. It is not possible to segment them. So the thing that they're having is very unique. So that's why you need to come up with a totally tailor-made experience for them. You need to generate the insight on the right time and totally based on their need. So this is the first key takeaway for us. And the second part is it possible to really help them on their journey? Yes, it is possible. Because by utilizing the interventions that we are generating, we already started to see the positive trend in terms of the patients who is able to onboard, which was not the case before. The same applies for the patient that stays on the therapy. As I've shared, it is 50%. 50% of the people do not continue their journey. But by utilizing the interventions and helping them on their journey, really shows us that we are able to help them to adhere to the therapy, and it is also shown, statistically by the models.
Yes, another question over here. Yeah.
Hi.
Bring
Thank you.
really close, really
Thank
close.
you very much for your inspiring presentation. Have a question. So you said patients are unique, but also Sanofi is a big company, a global company. How do you combine patient uniqueness with, let's say, markets, such as, in certain region, you have specific disease, such as sickle cell. So how do you take that into account in the NBI? How is it reflected?
So currently, MBI is deployed in US. The reason why we started in US is because of the breadth and the depth of the data that we can reach. So the thing is, the idea is not only make it available in US, because once you build a capability which is scalable, then it is possible to make it available in other countries. Of course, the regulations are not the same. The data limitations are not the same. But we have already experienced that it is possible. So we have other products for diagnosis and also finding by utilizing the power of AI, where we started again in US. And when you look at the scaling phase of the products, it is available in some of the countries in Europe already. So to your question, of course, you need to adjust based on the environment that you're deploying the capability, but we already see that it is possible.
Thank you.
Yes, well, that's great. That's the same corridor. Easy.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the presentation. Kumran here from BioNTech. I would like to understand how this NBI could be used for the clinical trials area. So this is more of drug development and delivery side of it, but I would like to see how the discovery phase could be covered by the NBI.
So the capability that we have built here is more focused on onboarding and retention. So we have other capabilities where we also use the clinical trial outputs and things like that. But especially with that part, the part that we're addressing is basically the onboarding, meaning the third phase, and also the retention part. So that's why, clinical trial is not really a data that we're using as a part of MVI, because it is more the post-RX part.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
Any other questions? Well, great congrats to you and all the teams. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, and please don't hesitate to visit our booth. We have a great discovery are the plants with virtual reality. You also have a corridor from R&D, research and development, to patients. A great partnerships with McLaren. Actually, the car is racing on tomorrow, on Saturday at Le Mans. And everything else is to be visited. A lot of innovations. Enjoy, and we start again another talk in about 20 minutes. Thank you.